Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And no sooner did these roster rumours emerge and they've been officially confirmed from the OpTic camp over the last couple of hours. Ghosty, the first challenger player in history to be picked up by OpTic, is now being made official. iLLeY is gone, dropped as we discussed earlier today, whether that was a good move, where he might go next. But now we've got to dive into more detail on his replacement and what this could potentially mean for the team. A high risk, potentially high reward option, and if it works, could well save this OpTic team season. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new. As always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Plenty to discuss. Firstly, wanted to shout out the 3 winners of the Breaking Point Fantasy. The Major 3 Fantasy will be up soon for you guys to enter. This was the winning team from this time: aBeZy, Dashy, Kenny, and Vivid. So 3 people, 3 candidates got this one correct and won their share of the prize money. Did want to quickly mention, because I was at lunch with Mack actually on Monday after the event, and we were discussing how do we stop these ties in future, and we said, you know what, we should do a captain type thing. Jack Walker says the same idea here. Like, in future, we'll try and make the website work. Maybe it won't be ready for Major 3, we'll see, where we can choose a captain for the team, and then that player gets extra points. Therefore, we, avoid some of the tiebreakers we've had lately. Thought that was a quick update for you guys. Now, we know that OpTic were dropping iLLeY. We saw that earlier today. The question was, who was the replacement going to be? There were some rumors going around that this whole idea they were picking up an amateur, like that it was going to be Ghosty. We discussed the rumor earlier today, was just kind of, OpTic manipulating things, and they were actually getting a really big candidate, an Arcitys, a Simp, or something like that, and the whole idea they were going for an amateur was actually just smoke and mirrors. Turns out that's not the case at all. They never usually do this, but clearly in the post-Scump, post-Rambo era, they're taking a chance. I mean, in fairness, they got Pro Loot before, but that was only a short-term thing. This, I'm sure they're intending, is a long-term solution for this team. Now, Capsule was trialing with the Mutineers, we believe, today. Dak had a trial yesterday. Those are the 2 names that have been going around right now in terms of amateur SMG players that people want to sign. But also, Ghosty played a scrim last night with Florida. This is how crazy this has all moved. The Ghosty last night, we believe, was playing scrims on the Florida Mutineers, and earlier today we discussed the fact that maybe Beans might be there now, if maybe Boston want iLLeY instead of Beans. Therefore, Ghosty has gone elsewhere. So he apparently played FaZe in London last night in scrims, but is now joining the OpTic camp. So Vickle actually says this with the Ghost things, are kind of implying that things are happening behind the scenes with Ghosty, and he's been a name that I've heard about for, a year and a bit at this point. He's been around a couple of years. Great story actually for Ghosty, because I believe he originated from the CCL, like the COD College League. He went from the collegiate Call of Duty scene into the CCL, the Challengers League, and is now being picked up by the biggest team in Call of Duty, and is arguably the biggest ever move from Challengers to the professional scene. Now, this started to gain more traction over the last couple of hours when Symphony on stream leaked a Discord DM from Slacked, and we actually heard this here, and even Ronnie says, I've heard this myself a few times. So this was clearly on Symphony's stream, where Slacked says Ghosty in this Discord chat, and presumably discussing who the OpTic man is, and then shortly after that, Symphony was like tweaking out on stream, and it was stressing about this. So, I didn't actually see any clips of this, but presumably if Symphony's on stream, like, oh my god, I can't believe I did it, all this stuff, probably implies that there's some accuracy behind it. If he played it off and he was super cool about it, then there would be less, less reason to believe this was true. But after all this, it had been leaked, and I was thinking, okay, how long is it going to be until OpTic just say, you know what, yeah, Ghosty's joining us, and that is indeed our team going into the set of Major 3 qualifiers, especially when Jacob L then comes out with his own article. I believe Crone is probably asleep, but I think it's just woken up, saying, Ghosty is signed with OpTic Texas from the Major 3 qualifiers and onwards. So quite interesting, they've not signed him on a 14-day just to try him. They're going all in, right? They've signed him till the end of the season, or at least on that contract. Of course, contracts don't mean that much. You can't just get released from them at the organizations. Will, it seems other teams have done that. Major Maniac went through exactly that not that long ago. But clearly OpTic are confident in Ghosty, and it's quite the statement for them to make, really, by signing an amateur player. You don't see this often at all, but Ghosty's been one of the real standouts. I think he was at SMG last year. Now he's running the flex role, where he, of course, will be replacing iLLeY straight up. I do wonder down the line here whether we'll get some explanations from OpTic as to exactly what caused this, what the plan is going to be going forwards in terms of roles, because Dashy on that super fast plays, he wasn't quite on the flex, but he was playing at a faster paced AR, and there were some rumors that actually Dashy would be the one to pull out the third SMG, and iLLeY would be the one always on the main, whereas now that's probably not the case anymore, and Dashy will probably always be on the AR, and if there's anyone to pull out a sub, it might be Ghosty if it goes to 3 SMGs on certain situations. So, all the rumors were circulating celebrating. Even the rotation said that he's going to sign for OpTic Texas. And very shortly afterwards, we get this from Ronnie, who says, yes, Ghosty has been added to the official CDL Discord. So he's obviously got the intel there. And when he sees that, that pretty much confirms the deal has been signed. And I'm sure that in part, OpTic are quite happy that the fact that they didn't have to bother with any buyouts or any drama with contract from other organizations and could just get a player they could easily get free agent, just pick him up on a whim, get the contract signed within a matter of hours, and then that's sorted for potentially the entire season if this works well. Officially then confirmed by OpTic shortly afterwards, welcome Dan Ghosty to OpTic. This is not a graphic that I thought I'd see. Honestly, tell an OpTic fan who went into a coma at the start of this season they'd be waking up before Major 3 and their team would be Shotzzy, Dashy, Huke and Ghosty. Like, they'd absolutely have a meltdown because Scump is gone. Of course, iLLeY is now gone. It's absolute madness. And, you know, honestly, congrats to Ghosty. I hope this works out for him. Hopefully he can take advantage of this opportunity because the pressure is no doubt rather immense. Yes, a lot of the OpTic fans and community thought maybe it was about time to move on from iLLeY, but nonetheless, there's still pressure stepping into a world champion's shoes, especially when you're an OpTic and you've got plenty of other things on your plate. As I said, he came for the collegiate system. I believe he's still at college, and that is going to raise some serious questions here, right? Like, when you're playing for OpTic in the CDL, obviously that's got to be your priority. So what does that mean for his college? Like, you know, there's still questions to be there, right? Is he going to be writing papers mid-scrim? Is he going to call it a day on that side? But then if it doesn't work out in the CDL, what's his future there, right? You know, some questions for him to answer and to be answered around the scene in general. If you guys are completely unfamiliar with this player, though, just wanted to mention he won the Boston Challengers Open just a few days ago and was clearly the standout player of the tournament, at least on his particular team. He had a 1.35 overall, a 1.35 as well in the grand finals, 1.28 in hardpoint, 1.16 in search, and a 1.4 in control. So pretty much dominated the tournament. Been a player on the up over the last few years. Heard lots of words from Doug actually over the last 12 months about Ghosty being a very talented player. And Doug seems to be the OpTic pipeline man. We'll see in a second. This I thought was kind of crazy as well. Only the 5th time in OpTic's history where OpTic have picked up a player that hasn't previously won a tourney. Happened to enable Dashy, Envoy, and Prolutes. And speaking of Doug, right, I thought it was pretty crazy the fact that Doug teamed with Formal a few events before he ended up joining OpTic back in the FaZe days, and then teamed with Karma briefly before he went to join OpTic Nation, then to OpTic, and then, you know, obviously with Dashy as well on Complexity, and now him and Ghosty have been a duo for quite some time, and he's going to OpTic as well, as Doug says. Congrats, OpTic Ghosty. So it's an absolutely wild timeline we've had the last couple of days, and this was a video I thought was pretty funny when, I think, you know, was it Doug let Ghosty live with him for a bit, right? There was like the jet ski thing that was going on, and he had these Boston Academy guys live in his house or something, doing it. I mean, yeah, so here's Ghosty on the left-hand side next to Shawnee here. Don't know why this video keeps on buffering, but you guys get the picture. They were doing some content, you know, they got on well together, and Doug kind of has said for a time, this guy is next up in the scene. Now, the other question I want to raise is, what happens from a coaching perspective here? Because Rambo with Dashy there is presumably not coming back. But at the end of the day, you've got Shotzzy, Huke, who probably, you know, okay, they can go rogue, but they might need to be tethered a little bit at times. Dashy, who doesn't want to be coached by Rambo, and then a rookie, right? I mean, you know, with iLLeY's leadership no longer there, are they going to be going even more rogue than they used to? What does it look like in that sense? I do wonder, right, because Fellow previously, who obviously gets on well with Ghosty here, Fellow on the right-hand side, like, he's a veteran Call of Duty player. He was the substitute and briefly started for the Dallas Empire during the Cold War season. And I do wonder here if there's a chance that maybe Fellow comes with Ghosty and kind of steps into a coaching role for this OpTic team. I don't know if that'll happen, but, you know, maybe. Obviously, Dashy's not going to be happy with Rambo coming back. And I do think that down the line, like, OpTic will need a coach at some point. I don't think they can get by with no coach forever. That's just not the way that Call of Duty is going nowadays. Maybe JP can do it, but generally JP's a numbers guy. Obviously, Fellow gets on with Ghosty. Don't know what Fellow's future looks like in challenges. Obviously, he did just win this past event with Ghosty, but, you know, maybe there's a chance there that that's an option they're considering at least. Because I do think there are questions as exactly how you get these guys to play well as a team. If, you know, you've got 3 guys that like to go rogue and then you're bringing a rookie in, like, you know, it's not exactly guaranteed success in terms of playstyle, even though their firepower ceiling probably went up with this move. And a lot of people would say that Ghosty was the #1 firepower guy in challenges for some time. I definitely wanted to share this. This is from a few months ago now, but this is Ghosty here talking trash to the opposition. There's an element to it. I mean, we've got Doug on the right-hand side of the stage as well. I mean, this is just like classic trash talk from several months ago during the previous season. But, I mean, yes, here's Ghosty, of course, in the foreground. He was talking trash to the other guy guys, and then he says to John, oh, you've got a world championship. That's pretty typical, but he's talking trash to the opposition. Doug and Ghosty end up kind of dapping up here in the foreground, but yeah, he likes talking, he likes saying a few words. He's not quite a Scrappy-esque figure in quite the same way, but we will see Scrappy versus Ghosty this stage if everything goes to plan, because they do play each other, which is obviously a very exciting prospect as well. But even as Octane's burner says, Dan Ghosty's going to be writing a thesis mid-scrim, so he's still in college. So, Matt, there's a lot of questions about this move, whether it can work. Obviously, on paper, I guess you could say that Ghosty's firepower is an upgrade on what iLLeY was able to deliver, but of course, iLLeY had many other attributes, and the team praised him, you know, so much for, right? They were talking always about iLLeY's system and iLLeY's leadership and his in-game communication, all this type of stuff, and then they drop him, and Ghosty, you know, is not guaranteed to bring any of those things to the table. So I think there are many questions to ask about this team. I know that some OpTic fans are like, what is going on here? Like, this isn't something that we never usually do. I think this might be a mistake, but others are saying, you know what? iLLeY wasn't really performing on the championship Sunday when it mattered against the top team, so it's time for a change. And look, I'm sure if they could have got Sib, they'd have probably done it. So, you know, I do wonder whether this Ghosty move is kind of just one of those intermezzo type things where down the line they want to get Pred, they probably want to get Sib as well. This is to get them through to the end of the season to see how things go. And then Ghosty might end up on like kind of a mid-tier CDL team next season, depending on how things go, or it works out incredibly well. But obviously there's a lot of pressure on him stepping into OpTic as pretty much his first time in the CDL to give it a go, especially when his schedule is far from easy. This is OpTic's schedule this major. They play Guerrillas on Saturday, February the 18th. They then play Toronto. That's going to be a banger. Then they play the Minnesota Rokkr, top 3 at the most recent major. Then the Subliners, and then FaZe. So, I mean, man, that is a tricky schedule for OpTic. Probably the hardest one any team has in the entire league. Ghosty will need to perform immediately, because if he doesn't, there's the risk, of course, of OpTic not even making winners bracket at their home major. So, yeah, so many talking points here. Definitely intrigued your thoughts in the comments below. No Scump, Seth Diabna return, unfortunately, for now. And that is where we're going to leave it for today. Just I thought this cool brand stat to close out here. Which players have played the most events for OpTic or the Huntsman during their days? Of course, Scump topping the lot at nearly 90. Then Formal Crim Karma, the Dynasty. Then we were the bottom of the list here is down at about 9. Dashy is at 20. I guess we'll see if Ghosty will stay an OpTic long enough to actually broach this particular list. But hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care, and I'll see you next time.